Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be answering your questions. I asked over in the Facebook group and on my Instagram page for you guys to give me all of your questions. Just pretend we're sitting down to coffee together. What would you ask me? And I'm gonna go through them rapid fire, as many as I possibly can in this video. So before we do, I wanna give you all a quick life update in case you missed it. I am pregnant. I am having my first baby in January. So a lot of these questions do pertain to that and asking if I'm still gonna be shooting weddings next year, how I'm navigating that change in entrepreneurship and stuff like that. So I wanted to update you guys on that. I'm in the middle of a super busy fall wedding season, working every single weekend, sometimes multiple times a weekend. So it's a bit hectic. So I haven't been making as many YouTube videos as I would have liked, but I'm definitely trying to get better at that and create consistent content for you guys. But on weeks that I'm not here on the YouTube channel, I am always in the photoboss Facebook group. So be sure to join that group if you haven't already. The third and final update I wanted to give you guys is that we have an official launch date for Hook and Book Brides, my branding and marketing course for wedding photographers. And it is coming out on October 11th. And if you want all the details, you want to see what the modules include, if it might be a good fit for you, what the price point is, and all the details, go ahead and get on the wait list for that. Then you'll be the first to know and you'll get a discount when the course does open. There will be bonuses and discounts and all kinds of fun stuff during the launch week of that course. So if you want all the details, be sure that you are on the wait list, on my mailing list, and inside the Facebook group. You won't miss anything as long as you're a member of the photoboss Facebook group. A candle just fell off my mantle. Oh well, the show must go on. Okay, so I'm gonna start with some questions that were asked in my Facebook group. Jessica asks how I handle not getting burnt out. Like right now I have a wedding, I've been trying to call and edit for 2 weeks and I can't seem to get my head around it and finish it. Jessica, this is an amazing question. I would say in regards to burning out, I have a couple of comments. So the first is that a lot of times when I find myself avoiding something, procrastinating on something, is that like it's getting built up to be more than it is in my head. So what I do is I tell myself, we're just gonna start it. We don't need to sit down for 8 hours and do this entire wedding. We just need to start. And many times what happens is once I get myself in Lightroom, once I'm sitting there and I'm actually going through the act of editing and culling and I'm doing it, I get on a roll and I get more done than I thought I would. So I kind of trick myself into working sometimes. And I realize that it really isn't as bad as I'm making it out to be in my head, because sometimes it can be overwhelming when we have thousands of files to go through. So I like to tell myself, okay, we're just gonna spend 30, 45 minutes on this project and that's it. And sometimes if I'm on a roll, I'm going to spend longer. The other thing I'll tell you is that boundaries are everything in business and in life, and boundaries really can equal freedom. So I make sure that I give myself days off. And if I work on a Saturday at a wedding, it's very, very likely that on Sunday I'm not working. I'm, stretched out on the couch, I'm watching football, hanging out with my family, and I'm just relaxing. And even if I get a client inquiry or an email or something like that, it's pretty likely that I'm not going to address it until Monday. And that just refreshes me. It makes me want to work and excited to work and excited to get back into these projects like culling and editing and stuff like that. So those are two things that I would tell you are really, really helpful for avoiding burnout. Chris asks, what is a process that you use to plan your time effectively in regards to having different goals and projects throughout the year? I do a couple of different planning and goal setting systems. The first is Power Sheets by Laura Casey, and that's really a goal setting system where you sit down and you dream out your year and you break those goals down every single month and week so that they become really actionable and tangible. So if you've never done this, I would suggest that goal setting system. I've done that for a couple of years now. I've bought these Power Sheet sets every year since like 2015. But I'm also implementing a newer system. I just read this book called The 12-Week Year, and it was like life-changing for me because it talks about how sometimes if you set a yearly goal, it's just too big and too zoomed back and we have too much time to do it that we don't do it at all. And instead, the author basically talks about breaking your year into like 12-week chunks and setting your goals based on that, because it's just more tangible. Like for my brain, I can just think that many months out instead of an entire year. So I'm gonna be doing the 12-week system from now on as I create and set goals. So check that out, I'll link it below. Jessica asks, a different Jessica asks, what inspired you to start your business and keeps you looking forward? I was inspired to start a wedding photography business when I was planning my own wedding. As a bride, I started seeing this whole world of weddings and my photographer, and I thought, if I could do that for a living, that would be awesome. And that's how it all basically began. And what keeps me looking forward is just always growing to the next thing. So with weddings, you kind of can't get bored because I feel like every single wedding is so different. And if you don't like the brides and grooms that you're working with, you can do things to get your ideal bride. You can brand or market better to get a different type of wedding. So I really think of entrepreneurship as like an ideal situation where I can just work with the people I want to work with. So that definitely helps me to look forward. And now that I have this YouTube channel and my course coming out and everything going on Facebook, I feel like that's where a new area of my business is headed. So I'm really excited about that. So that definitely keeps me looking forward to the future. Camilla asks how much money you earned in your first year of photography, second year of photography, and now. That's interesting. Okay, I think you'd have to ask my CPA to know for sure. But I think I probably grossed around $20,000 my first year. I didn't pay myself anything. It was basically all write-offs. Like whatever I made, I spent on gear and other stuff. And I think my second year was possibly like 60,000 and then 80,000. So it exponentially went up every year from there. I mean, it's really gone up every year, and that's what I focus on, is just growth. So I haven't been super numbers obsessed. I'm more profit obsessed. The thing that you have to remember is if somebody earns $100,000 in their business, it doesn't actually mean they earn $100,000. You know, you pay like a 30–40% tax rate, and then you have all your expenses and liability insurances and paying for second shooters and running your business. So by the time it's all said and done, you make maybe like a modest full-time income if you're lucky. So just remember that when it comes to people talking about how much money they make in their business, it's probably like the gross amount, not what they're actually taking home. Caro said, I would ask you about marketing. I get this so often. Like, this is probably my most asked like DM or email or in-person question ever, and it's really why I created my course. You can get on the wait list down below, but essentially what I would tell you about marketing is that marketing and branding and advertising are all like related. They're all sisters. And they all kind of work together, and it's really important to have your brand and your advertising plan mesh together and establish together at the same time, because it's going to be really expensive for you to market your business if you don't have a super ideal target client and your brand isn't on point. Like your messaging, your words, the way that you're representing your brand into the world, it's going to be so expensive and kind of fruitless until you have your brand established. So if you're on my email list, you know that I've been sending out so much content and education around the concept of branding and marketing, and I'm going to be focusing on that mainly in the month of October. So if you're in the Facebook group, get ready for lots of live stream content about marketing, because I'll be answering this question more there. Okay, let's see. Christine asks, how do you shoot weddings that are not your ideal situation or clients? First, I would say all my clients are my ideal clients because I have branded and marketed myself directly to them. And if you want to learn more about how to do this, you need to get into my course, Hook and Book Brides. It's going to revolutionize the way that you think about how you're attracting clients and where your business is headed. So I will tell you that my clients are my ideal clients. But all the time I'm shooting in situations on a wedding day and even in engagements and at events that are not ideal. And I think as wedding photographers, that's our responsibility, to be experts at trying to figure out and problem solve lighting and composition and challenging situations like rain and storms. And we've had hurricanes these past couple of weekends and just a lot going on. So I'm gonna link a couple videos here that talk about challenging situations, posing situations, dealing with lighting. I would say that when it's not an ideal situation, it's our responsibility as photographers to be experts at lighting them. So off-camera flash or posing or just getting into those tricky situations and making sure that we still produce amazing work. And honestly, dealing with these not ideal situations or circumstances or lighting or that kind of thing, it really does come with practice. So it's super important that you're spending time hands-on with your camera. Even if you don't have weddings booked, you have to be shooting and working in the dark and working in super unideal situations so that you can learn to think in that problem-solving space in your mind. Katarina asks, will having a baby impact your next wedding season, and will you take the year off? It's definitely going to impact my wedding season and my business and my life in general. Of course, I'm not taking a season off. I am booking 2019, hair in the mouth. I am booking 2019 and 2020 weddings, but I will be booking less weddings. I have a cap for the year, and then I also have a cap for the amount of weddings I will shoot in a given month, because I want to have, you know, some breathing room and some buffer so that I can spend time with my baby and my family and stuff like that, because I'm feeling that craziness right now, and I have weddings every single weekend, sometimes more than one wedding a weekend, and I know I don't want to be this busy when I have a baby, so I'm going to just be taking less. Fifi says, can I be your photographer protege? Of course you can. The best way to do this is to consume videos here on the YouTube channel, to be on my mailing list. I always mail out free education every single week, and then to be in my Facebook group, which you already are. And it could be a really good fit for you to be a part of the course. So be sure to get on the wait list for the course so that you can see all the details and see if you'd like to join me on October 11th. I'm so excited. Okay. Megan asks how to get consistent inquiries throughout the year. And she says, I feel like I have to hunt down clients sometimes versus them coming to me. Megan, this is an amazing question. I think we've all been there, and I call this the photographer feast or famine cycle, where sometimes it feels like we have lots of inquiries or however you say it. And sometimes it's just crickets and we need money, we need bookings, and we're kind of worried, like sitting there wondering what's going on. And the best thing I can tell you is that you must market consistently, even when you're busy and when things are going really well. It's the only possible way for you to avoid that feast or famine cycle where like sometimes you have lots of inquiries, sometimes you don't. So you cannot wait until you have no inquiries or you're getting a little worried about the following year to start blogging or submitting your work or going to bridal shows or networking or sending out your work to your vendors or, you know, consistently posting to social media and thinking about your different levels of marketing from attraction all the way down to client experience. So my biggest advice to you would be to get a marketing calendar, figure out exactly where your business focuses are going to be and stick with it. Create space inside of your regular daily calendar or your phone where you're actually going to perform these marketing activities, because it's like the only possible way to be consistent with your marketing, and it's the only way to have consistent inquiries all year round. So we deep dive into this like crazy in my course, Hook and Book Brides. And I give you so many more tactics and sample content calendars and kind of more fill in the blank stuff. So if you want to hear more about marketing and you'd love to get more tactics and you feel like marketing is one of those areas that's just kind of like a little foggy, you're not exactly sure what we're even really talking about when we're saying marketing, I totally get you. I was there about 5 years ago. I was like, okay, I don't really know what you're saying, but I want to know. Get on the wait list for Hook and Book Brides. It's really going to help clarify your brand message, what's happening in the trajectory of where you're going, and then it's going to have a marketing plan so that you can know exactly who to reach, how to reach them, and so that you can get booked. So more details to come for that for sure. Taylor asked a question about my workflow. So I actually made an entire video series. I'm gonna link here, I'll link it down below. I think it's like 5 videos long. It talks about how I book brides, how I manage them, send them my inquiries, like responses, emails, invoices, everything, all the way through to how I design albums. So all of that is gonna be linked. I'm not gonna get into that in this video. Nikki asks how to overcome nervousness and how to know what to do when your mind blanks at a wedding. So those are two really good questions. The first, nervousness, I would say that's kind of normal. I definitely get nerves before a wedding. Mostly I'm just trying to think of, did I pack everything? So I make sure that I have a list. I do this all the day before or 2 days before a wedding. You do not want to be prepping and cleaning your gear and formatting memory cards at or on the day of the wedding. I just think it's too much. And in regards to what I do if I blank at a wedding, I think there's a couple things that you can do. If you're posing somebody, I go ahead and I give them an activity, have them go somewhere, have them do something so that I can just think for 1 second, okay, what do I need to get done? And I'll look at my camera, I'll say, okay, what do we already have? And maybe how can I mix it up? Can I change my lens? Can I give them a new pose? That kind of thing that really helps me to break out of that funk. And sometimes on a wedding day, you just have to take a deep breath and tell yourself, you've got this, you can do this, because it's all in your head. It's self-talk, and you don't want to be thinking, oh my gosh, I can't do this. You don't want those negative thoughts floating around. So really, you have to affirm yourself a little bit. So sometimes things are a little bit hectic and crazy, and things are happening that are totally outside of my control, and I just say, I can do this, I can do this. And you start to think in solutions of how you can solve that problem instead of saying, oh my gosh, I can't do this. This is a terrible day. It's terrible weather. All these things, you can start to say, okay, but what do we have? What is working? What do we need to get done? And like start to think really practically instead of panicking inside of your own mind. Peter asks, what is my one favorite lens? I would say it's probably still the 85mm 1.4. Love that lens. I can't use it often during the wedding day when we're in a really small space for getting ready. It's just not great for like small spaces and large groups, but when I can use it, I am using it. Okay, so I'm gonna switch over and start answering some of the questions that I got inside of my Instagram DMs and through the question and answer thing in my stories. The first one is, how do you know which details are going to be photo worthy and which ones are not? My answer for that really is that if someone hands me a bunch of details on a wedding day, I'm gonna shoot all of it. I don't, get picky and decide what's worth, shooting or that kind of thing. It's my job to document what's important for my bride, so I don't really pick out what's photo worthy. But what I do is I bring along styling elements like trays and ribbons and stamps and things that I think are gonna add to the scene. Since this is Instagram, it's mostly people's usernames, so they don't really have names, so I'm just gonna read out the questions. How do you find the perfect location for photos? This is a good question because I don't really look at the location as much as I look at the light, because if it has beautiful light and I know I'm gonna get beautiful skin tones in the exact lighting scenario that I want, I know I can make it look better than it is. So my number one criteria when I'm looking around to take a bride or a groom or really anyone that I'm photographing is going to be lighting. When the baby arrives, will you be getting studio photos or a lifestyle in-home session? I'm definitely gonna be having somebody come into my home. I love those kind of photos. I haven't thought about this too much yet, actually. I'm terrible when it comes to scheduling my own photos and getting pictures of my own life, but I'm definitely gonna have somebody come to our house. Do you have a bridal magazine that you send out after clients book you that gives tips and advice for the planning? Yes and no. I bought the template, I started customizing it, and I have been working on it, but it's not done. So it's not something that I send out to my couples yet, but it is on my list of things to do this off season in December. How do you handle the physical challenges during pregnancy while being a wedding photographer? I am finding that it's not so far as bad as I thought it would be. Photographing weddings pregnant, it's definitely a challenge. It's definitely getting harder each week. I have probably photographed 6 or 7 weddings pregnant so far. And really the trick has been that I just have to take better care of myself, meaning I have to eat and pace myself and stuff like that. Whereas before I could really just go and ignore myself and just get the photo, and I was kind of running on adrenaline, where now I have to snack more often and drink Gatorade. And other than that, I'm finding that I'm so focused on every single wedding that I feel really good and I feel really able to just get done what needs to get done. So far I haven't found pregnancy to be very limiting when it comes to photography. If I was shooting, at the very end of my pregnancy, which I won't be, I think it would be a ton harder. Just physically, it'd be really hard. But right now, I'm still small enough that like I forget that I'm pregnant at weddings. I just found out I'm pregnant too. As a wedding photographer, what are your plans for near the end of your pregnancy? Did you tell your couples? What was that process like? I didn't tell my couples, mostly because it doesn't actually correlate with any of my wedding dates. So I am not shooting a wedding within like 10 weeks of my due date, so it didn't really matter because I'm having a winter baby, and because here in the winter we really don't have that many weddings. I just didn't book anything in the winter. My last wedding will be in November, and I'll still have a couple months to go, so I didn't really tell my couples because it's not really going to affect anything. My plan for near the end is not to work, so it just worked out really beautifully that I happen to be due in January, and I don't have any weddings leading up to it, and then I don't have weddings for months after. So I'm going to probably take a few weeks off from everything, and then I'll slowly get back into work, and I won't be shooting a wedding until April. They'll have from January to April off from physically shooting weddings, but of course I'll be making videos and, you know, writing newsletters and blog posts and stuff like that. What videos or people inspired your editing? I'm trying to get better at this. I have a video about developing your style. I'll link that here and down below because that is such a good question, and that's something that's going to grow and develop with you over time. But I was always inspired by, you know, film photography, stuff that's just very classic, not super over edited, not super dark. And that's just what I've always been drawn to. So I really just listened to that, and I knew that that's what I naturally loved most. So I stuck with it, and I was super consistent, and I found ways to edit my work or presets that I could tweak in my own work to reflect that style. So that's really how I found my style. And that took a couple years. You know, my old work doesn't look like my work now. It takes a couple years to fall into your style. But I would say really try not to look at what everyone else is doing, but rather think about what you're most drawn to, what colors and what editing style just really lights you up, and stick with that, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to be most fulfilling for you as an artist. And seeing other people's stuff can be interesting, and you can say, oh, I like that too, but probably not as much as the one that you were originally doing. So stick with your own style as much as you possibly can. But if you're struggling with finding your style, being consistent in your editing, check out my video on this. I think the exercise that I give in that video will really help like clarify what colors and styles are going to be truest for you. How did you come to get weddings for people in the armed forces? I really want to photograph weddings for people serving our country, but I don't really know how to market for that. That is kind of an interesting answer. I didn't specifically ever set out to photograph lots of military weddings, although I feel like I do a fair amount of them now. What is the reality is that I live near the Naval Academy, and because of that, and I think the Naval Academy fits my brand and my style of photography really well, that we kind of naturally ended up together. It wasn't that I set out to be a Naval Academy wedding photographer, but I love being one. So I never originally intended for that to be what I put out into the world. But once I worked there once or twice, I figured out it's gorgeous. I loved everything about it. I loved working with military couples, and I started marketing myself more towards that just by what I posted, what I shared, what I blogged, where I submitted that work, and that kind of thing. So if you're hoping to do more military weddings, I would say plan a styled shoot, photograph a military couple even for free to get the portfolio. Make sure that they give you a model release so that you can use the images however you like, so that you can show military couples that you want to work with military couples. I think that's absolutely crucial, and that would be your first step in the process, would just be to do a styled shoot with a military couple and start showing the world that that's the type of wedding that you want to photograph, because what you put out is what you're going to start to attract. Do you have set hours for yourself? Yes, primarily I am working 5 days a week in the office. I'm in the office from about 9 a.m. till like 3-ish. Since being pregnant, that has changed a little bit. I've just decided that instead of waking up really early and doing my morning routine and doing my usual routine before I got pregnant, I don't set an alarm most days. and I just let myself sleep because I think that season of my life is very short-lived and I'm not gonna get a lot of sleep, you know, for the foreseeable future. So I don't have the most set start time, but most days, if you've ever emailed me, you know I'm pretty much in the office by 9, and in the afternoon I tend to be a little more useless work-wise, so I dip out early. But that just depends on what's happening in my business, what projects I'm working on. For the most part, I don't work weekends or evenings unless I'm actually shooting a wedding or shooting an engagement session. How do you get beautiful bokeh shots? Easiest way to get beautiful bokeh shots is to have a lens that produces lots of bokeh. I find that primes, when you shoot at a wider aperture, produce that background. So I can get really beautiful bokeh on my 50mm 1.4 as long as I'm shooting around f 2.0 or a little bit wider. When you run out of content for Instagram, when you're a new photographer and you've already recycled your old content, and then it goes ... and I can't see the rest of it, but I get the question. I would say create new content. If you're running out of content, if you don't have clients booking you currently and actively, and you want to be booking brides or families or seniors or babies, shoot those things. Even if no one's paying you to do those things, you can do styled shoots, you can do free shoots, you could do a giveaway so that somebody feels like they're really getting something out of it. But I would say you have to go out and create content. Even if it's just taking your camera everywhere you go and shooting things and proving to people that you're a photographer, you're working, you're getting better. And not only is this gonna create content, but it's gonna make you better because you're actually practicing as a photographer and growing. If your client is in the same state as you, do you make them come to you to meet, or do you go to them? I normally find kind of a halfway point or somewhere that's decently close to me in my studio when I'm meeting with a potential client, or I just meet via Skype or the phone. So if they're a little bit further and it's gonna be, somewhat difficult to meet, I can meet remotely. But normally we try to find a spot that's, somewhere in the middle. How has being pregnant affected your work so far? Back pain, feet pain, is this all hurting more? So far, I don't think I've experienced more like aches and pains on wedding days than usual. The biggest way I'd say it affected my work was really early on when I was super sick, and I really wanted to get my course out for you guys, and I wanted to launch it months ago, but I really couldn't, and I had to just chill and relax, and a lot of June and July I was super sick. So that's the biggest way that it's affected me, but I'm feeling so much better now, and it ultimately worked out that I wasn't able to launch the course, so I had a lot more time to add to it and really think about it and add bonuses and make it better. So it's ultimately something I'm so much more proud of now. So it worked out really nicely. Will you be shooting weddings next year? What do you tell your clients for 2019? I am gonna be shooting weddings next year. I'm shooting a very limited number of weddings. I tell my clients that I'm shooting weddings. Basically, my baby is gonna be born in January, so by the time that the wedding season rolls around, it's kind of like not a relevant thing anymore. I'll just have a baby at home. How did you make photography your career? I feel like this could be its own video. That's a really loaded question. The best way I can say that I made it my career is that I built a brand and I priced myself and marketed myself in such a way that I could live off of it. So pricing is really important, and running a business that is profitable and that pays you is really important if you're going to make it a career. So that has to be your ultimate goal when you're sitting down and when you're pricing yourself and planning out your business. So that's something that I always emphasized. I didn't sit there and say, I can't raise my prices because X, Y, and Z. Like, I had to raise my prices because I had to run a profitable business. So that's a mindset that I've always been in. So I think that's a big part of it. But if you're interested in growing a brand and developing a marketing plan that can attract your ideal client and really actually book you brides that would hopefully support your life, you may be interested in my course, Hook and Book Brides. Shameless plug. Waitlist is down below. Okay, what would be your 2 must-have lenses to use for a solo wedding shooter? My 2 must-have lenses. Probably I would just shoot with like a 50 and an 85, or my 24-70 and my 85. Those would give me a huge amount of difference between the two lenses. What steps did you and do you take to prevent the horror that is ghosting? I think that having a really well-written response email can really help with ghosting. The other thing that you can do is really put out a lot of who you are online, a little bit of your pricing, a little bit of your approach to shooting, about you, where you live, where you work, making it not so much of a mystery, so that when someone does inquire with you, they're really serious. It makes them a more qualified lead. So if you have all of this information easily found on your website, you're gonna get less of those inquiries. So the more of yourself and your life that you share online and that you give your clients, they don't have to dig for this information. They don't have to ask you for this information. I think that they're more qualified leads, and then you don't end up getting ghosted because they're just asking about price. They're truly interested in you. So I think what you put out into the world and the brand that you present has a lot to do with how often you get ghosted. As a second shooter, what should be my main concerns? I would say number one, ask the primary shooter what you should be doing. Just do whatever it is they want you to be doing. Number two, I would say getting candids, shooting lots of the groom, getting those like behind the scenes, fly on the wall type of portraits are phenomenal and are something that I love when my second shooter gets, because I can't always be sitting there getting those moments between guests because I'm shooting the formals and the bride and groom portraits and the bridal party portraits. So getting those like alternate angles and those moments that are a little bit more photojournalistic is something that I would say as a second photographer should be high on your list. What made you choose Nikon? Would you ever switch brands? I chose Nikon because when I was saving up as a 16-year-old for my first DSLR, I did research and I settled on Nikon. I don't really think you can really go wrong with this. It's really more of what camera feels right in your hands and what brand fits the type of photography that you're trying to do. The only time I consider switching is when I see people using mirrorless cameras. I think the mirrorless systems are so great. Nikon has come out with some, but they're not fantastic yet. They don't even have dual card slots. I am waiting eagerly to see if Nikon in the next couple of years will come out with a mirrorless camera system. I would take that up really quick because of the just all around better everything, but also the weight. The gear weight is kind of a thing for me. I wish I had a way to get incredible photographs and a system that feels really good in my hands, but it weighs a lot less. And that's why I'm very attracted to the mirrorless system, but I'm not about to make a huge switch. I really don't have a time in my schedule, my life, where I would have time to switch over before a wedding and learn it and feel good about it. It's just not happening. But I love Nikon. I'm really happy that I went with Nikon. I think that it can be harder sometimes to find wedding photographers that shoot Nikon, at least in my area. It seems like Canon is really popular. I work with lots of Canon photographers and I think that the work is great. The colors are different. It's definitely a different system, but I have always felt more comfortable with a Nikon in my hands. How do you dress for a formal wedding versus a casual one? For the most part, I dress pretty much the same always. I have dresses that are a little bit more formal or a little bit more casual, but my rule of thumb is that I'd rather look a little too dressed up than underdressed. I never want to look, frumpy or dumpy in any way. So I would rather just dress up. I always wear flats, closed-toed shoes, dresses that go to the knee, like stuff like that, just because I don't want to have to worry about looking out of place at a wedding or having things right up or having any kind of wardrobe malfunction. So for the most part, regardless of where my weddings are, I'm gonna dress almost the same just because I want it to reflect my brand and I always want to look professional. Your best marketing tips for a $0 ad budget. Yeah, I think that most of my marketing I don't spend a dime on, because advertising and marketing are two very different things. Advertising is when you're paying to get your message out in front of an audience that is most likely not yours, and marketing is just getting your message out in general, and a lot of times to your own audience that already follow you or already on your mailing list, that kind of thing. So what I would say is creating consistent weekly helpful content is the number one thing I would tell people, and it's the most overlooked thing. If you're not creating content that's interesting and valuable, that's something that someone would look at and say, I need to share this because it's literally that valuable, you're missing out on your number one free marketing approach right there. I would love more details on doing bridal shows. I've never done one. The big one in my area is $1,000 and I can't decide if it's worth it. That is difficult. I would definitely say that when you're deciding on whether or not to make a big investment like that into your business marketing, you need to get more details like how many brides are going to be there. Are you going to get all their email addresses and their phone numbers? Are you going to be able to follow up? How many other photographers are going to be there for that competition? That kind of thing. The shows that I tend to do are smaller, much more affordable or free open houses, and they have limited amounts of photographers, and they're great not only for meeting brides but for hanging out with other vendors and networking. So I think I have a video somewhere about my table setup and what I bring. I'll link that as well. But I would say get more information, and if you can, talk to one of the photographers who's been at this show before. A lot of times you don't really know if something's going to be a good investment, but if you talk to photographers who have been in the show before, they can be really real with you as to whether or not that show converted for them. You definitely would have to book a couple of weddings for that to justify the cost, right? So get more information. Styled shoots. Do you go more towards your style for branding or what season it is? The short answer is always, always, always have your styled shoot fit your brand. If a styled shoot does not fit your brand, there's no point in for you to even be photographing it. So it has to fit your brand. But I love when it can incorporate a season and you can have winter elements or spring elements or anything like that, but it always has to fit your brand or there's no point in being a part of it at all. Should I take my photos underexposed for better editing in Lightroom? I would say if it's between being underexposed and overexposed, always lean under. There's just more information in the raw file for you to recover. If something's really blown out, it can often mean that information is just gone. So if you're gonna be between the two, under is better. I always just try to expose for 0 in my camera, meaning I want it to just be very like in between. When you're looking at the histogram, I'm looking for that curve that doesn't have crazy highlights or crazy darks. How soon do you have a client consult before the wedding? A year, 6 months? Typically, my clients are booking me about a year out. How do you get your work to look so consistent? This happens both in camera and in post-production. So I would say shooting the same way in similar lighting situations with the same lenses is going to yield a similar result, but also I don't get crazy in my editing. So I have the way that I edit and I don't really experiment. I'm not gonna go crazy dark or crazy warm or get like really moody. I'm just gonna stick with my style, and that can be really difficult when you get inspired and you wanna do something a little different. You just get bored. But the best thing you can do is be consistent in your editing. So I would say using the same preset every single time is a big part of why my work always looks the same. So you got to shoot the same and you have to edit the same in order for your product to look the same in the end. Lauren asks, what is something you still think you need to work on or improve on as a photographer? Man, so many things, so many things. I would love to get more efficient in how I spend my time in my office, the time blocking, just knowing when I'm gonna be doing admin stuff versus when I'm gonna be doing like editing and client work and workflow work. So just getting really strict with my schedule and being really smart, that's just stuff that I could be so much better about. Even my posing, I'd love to improve my posing. I would love to get better at like flash and artificial lighting. I'm always trying to learn and grow. I'm constantly reading books, listening to podcasts, and just trying to figure out all of these things. One area I'm working on in my business right now is Pinterest marketing, and not just like super basic Pinterest marketing, but figuring out Pinterest ads, Pinterest video ads, and hashtags, because apparently you can use hashtags in Pinterest and stuff like that. So I'm always listening to podcasts about this kind of stuff. There's actually a Pinterest podcast that I just came across that's amazing. I'll link it for you guys. It's incredible. and it's blowing my mind. And so I'm working on all these areas, and I'm just, yeah, I constantly, like every month I'm picking a new area and just deep diving into it and trying to find information or courses that I can buy, books that I can buy, of like how to be better, because I'm never done. Definitely, there are so many areas that I need to be working on in my business always. So that's a good question. Okay, Zoe says, favorite photography podcasts. I don't actually listen specifically to podcasts about photography. I listen to podcasts about marketing, branding, entrepreneurship, time management, Pinterest, like those types of things, so that I can grow my business. Like all of those elements, like email marketing and stuff like that, really lend themselves to me growing my business. So I don't actually listen to podcasts that are specifically about photography. I think I have like maybe one. I'm gonna link my top 3 favorite podcasts right now in the information section. So if you guys wanna jump on there, I'm really curious what podcasts you guys listen to. Every time I get on my podcasting app, I see more and more amazing podcasts. So I feel like there's not even enough time in the day to listen to them all. But if you have a favorite photography podcast, leave it in the comment section below. I'm gonna let this be enough for this video. I'm hoping this isn't too long. I'm gonna try to edit it as short as I possibly can, but thank you so much for watching. As always, leave me your questions below. I will try to get back to every single one of them, and I am going to be doing more of these Q&A style videos over in my photoboss Facebook group, so be sure to join me there, and I will see you guys next week. Bye guys.